All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Roadmap to Retirement. Tune in for financial tips, investment strategies, and smart money moves to supercharge your retirement savings. Alex Neri, CFP, and guests are here to help you build your roadmap to retirement.
Dave Pulcini joins us for, I think, the second or third time.
Second, Alex.
Second?
Yeah. First time was only with another guest, and I've been waiting for my opportunity.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry you feel slighted. But anyway, we're happy to have you here. We don't have a set topic for this podcast. Yeah. I think we took the inspiration of the one we do every 10 episodes with Marshall, doing questions from callers or questions from listeners, and we're turning it into just questions from the depths of Dave's mind. So we're going to let you do rapid fire, and we're going to cover a lot of different topics.
Wow. And you have no idea what's coming, do you?
I don't know what's coming, but I'm very smart, so I'm feeling pretty confident.
I do want to run through a list, and this came from the fact that I've had feedback on my own podcast about, Dave, you don't talk about anything that you do. You bring on guests, and you don't really get into your own thing.
Yeah,
so
it's a challenge.
Why don't you talk about you a little bit?
Yeah.
So let's talk about Alex on his podcast. Here we go. So it's a free opportunity.
Yeah.
So
that's what people want.
Let's start with this, and not to be negative, but I want to kick this off strong. You're going to like this. So what's the worst thing that you've seen another financial advisor do for somebody's financial plan?
For the jugular.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the financial plan or in terms of
anything?
Philosophy?
I'll leave it open. Yep.
I think just a general category of misleading or not disclosing information to prospective clients, which is a lot. I just had a debate on LinkedIn with some people over A-shares.
Ooh.
So I don't know if you saw this or not, but in teaching at St. John Fisher, I've done this adjunct thing for people that are up to speed. Yeah. They have a bank of questions that comes along with the textbook that I'm able to use for quizzes and tests and all that stuff, which is really helpful because I don't want to sit there and write questions. And every once in a while, in going through that, I find a question that's like comical or just strikes me as a little weird because there's like this academic side of financial planning, and there's like the real world, what we actually do every day. So there's one question, or I guess the whole chapter was talking about mutual funds, and it spends what I thought was an inappropriate amount of time talking about different share classes. Okay. So they go through A, B, and C shares.
Yep.
Really didn't touch on like institutional shares or any kind of load wave share, anything like that. Which for people that don't know what that means is basically there's this old school model of A, B, and C shares. A shares have a front load on it. So you pay, we'll call it 5% up front. So if I invest $100, $95 is actually invested, $5 goes to a sale charge. B shares, which have a back end charge, so the same thing backwards. We'll leave it at that. And then C shares that don't have a front or a back end charge, but they do have a higher internal charge. So you pay more throughout the life of the investment, but you don't pay up front. So that's a background story.
Yep.
So I put out there a screenshot of one of the questions saying that I'm surprised that we're still learning about A shares because they're more or less irrelevant, that like people aren't using them. And then sure enough, a couple people rose to the surface saying, hey, I use those. And they tried to make an argument for it. And I will admit that there is an argument in the sense of there's no bad tools, there's just wrong ways to use the tools. So I guess there is an ethical way that you could use an A share or C share or B share for that matter. But the problem with it is it's not putting you on the same side of the table as a client.
Yep.
So in my mind, if somebody's coming to you for financial planning or financial advice, you should be charging them a fee for financial advice, not a commission sales charge for filling out the paperwork to sign up for a mutual fund, which is basically what you're doing. So to your original question, the worst thing that I've seen is it's not using these products because there is no bad product. It is not going far enough to make the client understand the nature of your relationship. And if you can look at the client, look them in the eyes and say, I am not acting as a fiduciary. I'm not acting in your best interest. I am not selling you financial advice. I'm not doing financial planning with you. I am just selling you a product for a commission. If you can say that sentence out loud and they still want to do the A share, that's great. Good for them. And maybe there's a place for that. But that was my point. And that's a very long answer to a fairly simple question.
I knew it would be rapid fire. But I knew, because I'm coming with some questions. But I'm
not a rapid fire guy.
That last, if you said all that one sentence that you said, I think most people would say, I have no idea what he just said. I'm just trying to put my money into something.
I think the backstory is important. And like I'm talking about share classes on mutual funds, there's also the same issue that exists in annuity business, which we could talk about for hours, different types of insurance products. And it's the old school model of the insurance guy comes to your house in a suit and tie and says, I'm here to talk about financial planning. And then by the time he leaves, he bought 3 life insurance policies and you don't know what happened. So I think that's an issue. It's separating out, are you a financial advisor being paid for financial advice, or are you here to sell me a product? And maybe that's okay if I want to buy a product, but as long as we understand the difference, I think it's good.
Interesting. I want to ask you about the fiduciary thing, but that'll be for later. Okay. There's your cue. But I want to go along with, this is my last worst question. What is You have a lot of clients and you've been around for a little while. What's the worst thing that you've seen a client do against your recommendation?
Oh, it's also a long list. I don't want to pick on anybody. Maybe they're listening. A few that come to mind is, I think it's frustrating as a professional a little bit when somebody's paying you for advice. And I think doctors, attorneys, everybody could make the same argument. They're coming to you for advice, they're paying you for that advice, and then they're turning around and not listening to you. So the doctor example is when you go to your physician for a checkup and they say, hey, like you're fat, you should probably lose some weight, which sounds mean, right? You should probably lose some weight because you're not healthy. You should probably try to be healthier. And then a year later, they go back to the doctor's office and they're still doing all the same things and they're not healthy. And I understand it's hard, right? I'm not picking on that person. Sounds like I'm picking on that person. But the doctor might feel frustrated that, hey, I gave you all this advice, you didn't follow it, and now you're still in the same spot you were. I think for us as financial advisors, there's a similar thing of just like, you're coming to my office, we're meeting every year, we're going through this stuff, and then something happens where you leave my office and nothing changes. You don't implement any of the things we talked about.
Yep.
So that can be frustrating.
Yep. Or the follow-up, right? You follow up and say, hey, these are the action items 1, 2, and 3. And somehow it just doesn't happen. And you try to make it easy because I know what you do. You can't make it any easier.
Yeah. Like one of the things that we run into all the time as advisors is there's like a list of other things that we want to make sure the client's doing that aren't things that we do directly. So one of those is, do you have a will? And I meet with people and we say, hey, do you have a will? And they're like, either, yes, I have it, it's updated, great. That person's fine. Or there's, I don't have a will, or I have a will and it's not been updated in forever and that's a problem. And you sit with the client, you say, do you think we should do something about that? Like half sarcastically, and they go, yeah, I know I need to do that. I've been meaning to do it. Would it be helpful if I introduce you to somebody that can help you with that? That'd be great, thank you. And then you do a follow-up email and you introduce them to an attorney that specializes in estate planning and they can do the will. And then 6 months later, when I'm meeting for the next review meeting with that same client, hey, I have in the notes here that you needed to do a will and I introduced you to someone. Did you get that taken care of? Oh, no, I've been meaning to do that. And that just, it keeps going in a cycle.
Yep.
So that's...
The will's a great example.
Just do the thing you said you were going to do. And that's super hypocritical because I have all kinds of things in my life that fall into that category. But whatever. I'm a guy with a podcast. I can say what I want.
There was a book, and I'm going to get these stats wrong. And this was maybe 10, 15 years ago I read it. It was called Change or Die.
Okay. I haven't read
and
that
it was literally like what you're talking about. Like they tracked folks that were basically, the doctor said, if you don't change, you are going to die. 90% of people did not make the change. It was some obnoxious number. Like,
it's hard.
You're going to die if you don't do that. It's easier to die. Yeah, I don't know how that relates to financial.
Well, I try to get them to say it's a problem, right? I'm not going to say, hey, you don't have a will and that's a problem. I want to get you to say it's the process of, hey, do you have a will? What do you think about that? And then they're usually, oh, I know I should have one, blah, blah, blah. So now they've admitted they have a problem. So now I don't feel as bad when I follow up and I'm a little bit harsher the next time. You told me that you needed to get a will and you didn't do it.
Yeah, and sometimes you're the accountability coach for financial planning.
Yes.
Which is part of the financial plan. So what's up with the mustache?
Great. I thought you'd never ask. So I don't always have a mustache. I did have a really cool beard for one part of my life. So it's Movember. If you didn't know, that's November with an M. The M is for mustache. It's an opportunity to raise money for men's health issues.
Oh, you have a real answer for this?
I have a real, yes. Okay. We've raised some money so far, which is great.
Yeah.
And December 1st, I will probably not have a mustache anymore because not everybody likes it. I think it looks good, but...
I wonder, let me ask you this because it leads down a path that I wanted to take this. Who do you think you personally, Alex, does the best financial planning for, like ideal client? Someone walks in, I know you can add the most value. What does that person look like?
Ideal client. I guess it's somebody that's at the point in their life where for whatever reason they want to start to take this stuff seriously. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of people that's like close to retirement, they get the light at the end of the tunnel and see, oh no, I've got to finally start to address some of these things. But I have a lot of clients that are much younger than that and they, for whatever reason, started to take it serious earlier in life. Maybe it's something pushing them, like their parents aren't in the spot they want to be in, so like they're doing it differently for themselves. I find it really hard to make a meaningful impact on a client's life if they don't care, which sounds very blunt and whatever, but
true.
It's true, right? If you're gonna come see me and pay me fees to do financial planning, and then you're gonna walk out the door and forget about it, or you don't care about it, it's probably a waste of money. If we're being really honest, like we're a business, we'll take you. I can't say that out loud, but if you're not going to take it serious, it doesn't really make a difference. My ideal client is somebody that's ready to take financial planning serious, and somebody that doesn't mind it being wrapped in a thick layer of sarcasm.
Okay. Going back to your mustache now.
Yes.
Someone is 62 years old. They have $2 million. They walk in and see Alex with his flannel and his mustache, and they say, what does this kid possibly have to offer? What do you say to those people?
Okay, so the 62-year-old will look at my mustache and not think anything of it because in their mind and their generation, this is a very normal look that was destroyed by the millennials or Gen X, maybe. I don't know. So they won't mind the mustache. There is a old school approach to financial planning where you expect to see somebody in a suit and tie, which you and I and everybody that we work with is probably not that way very much.
Yep.
So
this is very dressed up.
Yeah, you're very dressed up today. And it's the cliche about magnets attract and repel. So like you want to attract people that are like-minded to you, but you also want to push away the people that maybe aren't aligned. So if somebody wants a financial advisor wearing a suit and tie without a mustache or with, I don't know, whatever facial hair they prefer, I'm probably not going to be a match for them. That's okay. I don't need everybody.
So what do you actually do? What I was trying to get at from you was, what do you actually do for those people that will justify them coming in to see you?
What do I do for them?
Give me some action items. Someone walks in $2 million, or 62, 63, whatever I said. What do you do?
Yeah, I think most of our time is looking at sort of the hurdles throughout retirement. So if you think about, what would you say, 62 years old? How old is this person?
Go to 62.
62. All right, so they're 62. So they may be retired. They may not be retired, depending on where they work. They might have gotten to retire at 55 and get a pension. But we're looking at all the hurdles throughout their retirement. So that is when and how should they claim Social Security. So for those of you that don't know, anytime between 62 and 70, you can apply for Social Security, but maybe you shouldn't. Medicare, what are the options with that? What are the charges for that? Which plan's right for me? Pension distributions. So if you do have a pension, which option should you take with it? If you have an inheritance, how does that play into your retirement plan? If you save money into a pre-tax bucket, you have a Roth account, you have a non-qualified account, which order should we take distributions in? What's the right way to do that? And then all that kind of, in my mind, comes back to a tax decision. I think tax planning is essential to financial planning. Too many people sit around and think about, the rate of return, how their portfolio is set up, and they're chasing like that extra 0.5% of alpha, we would call it. And I think it's much more beneficial to most clients to focus on the tax planning, the distribution strategy, and how they can make the money that they've saved have the greatest impact on their retirement and have the best lifestyle.
So if someone hears that and said, he just threw a lot of financial planning stuff at me, and I have no idea what he just said. Someone walks in the office and they have a first meeting with you. What exactly does that look like?
Sure.
You meet them at the front desk, you walk them to a conference room, and then what happens?
Yes, I'm glad you pointed that out. We do have conference rooms. First meeting, I like to think of it as more of a meet and greet. It's very casual. I don't want to see any financial statements. I'm not going to ask you about numbers or anything like that. I want to have an opportunity to learn about the client, what they might be looking for, what their experience has been with financial planning. And then I have an opportunity to share with them my process, which is what we're about to go into, my process, who I am, what my credentials are, what my experiences are, what my philosophy is towards financial planning, and then ultimately see if there's a fit, meaning do I do something that they need?
Yep.
Do they want it? And is there a personality fit there where like we can stand to be in the same room together for at least twice a year for the foreseeable future, which is a big deal, right? There's personality fit's a big deal. And I'll be the first person to tell you if I meet with somebody and it's not a fit for me, I'll walk them to somebody else that can help them and be better suited. So that's the first step of the process. It's meeting one. I think you're probably going to ask about meeting two. Is that fair?
Go ahead.
Keep going. All right, meeting two. So meeting two is more of an information gathering meeting. So I said the first meeting, we're not talking any specifics really. The second meeting is when I'll ask them to come in with financial statements, an idea of their budget, and I give them an organizer. They're not on their own. They get an organizer to fill out, come back in with that, and now we have the data there. And somebody would say, couldn't you just have them email it over or send it over? Do you need to meet in person to go through this? I'm going to insist that we meet in person because there's going to be a lot of holes in that data, not because they did a bad job, but because there's a lot of things that maybe aren't as simple as the numbers when you start to talk about the budget especially. So I want to make sure that we have a strong understanding of all the data and fill in anything that's missing. Third meeting, so they go home, they come back. Third meeting is more of the plan meeting. So at that point, we've got some software that we use. We're able to do some different projections and talk about what their retirement plan looks like. And it is an opportunity for us to make some initial recommendations on things they could or should do better. One of the problems with this is that it's a living, breathing thing. So whatever I tell them in that meeting doesn't necessarily need to be true the rest of their retirement, which is why the review process is important and keeping those things up to date. But I'm not at the review process yet. I'm skipped ahead. Before the review process, we still need to make them a client. So after the third meeting, we've made some recommendations. At this point, we find that people have been through enough. They spend enough time with me that they have an idea whether or not this is a good fit. I would ask them to go home, think about it. If I'm meeting with a couple, I want them to talk amongst themselves without me being in the room to decide if it is a good fit. I say this a lot and it sounds cliche, but I hope that they'll be a client for life. So I'd rather be really slow in the onboarding process give them a time to think about it. So when they come on board, they're committed to it and they can hopefully stick around for a long time. Yeah, so from there, it goes into the review process, assuming they move forward. But review process for us is every 6 months. So I have a review meeting in the spring and the fall. The reason I've set it up that way is a spring meeting I want to be around the time they're filing their taxes, because a lot of the things we're going to talk about are going to be top of mind. If they can bring in their actual tax return, that's really helpful. People are bad at that. Even though I tell them to do that, they don't always do it. But bring in your tax return. Let's go through it together. Let's talk about other tax planning things that might be opportunities. Of course, we talk about the other financial planning stuff too, but being that it's around tax time, it's a good opportunity to do that. And then the second review meeting of the year is in the fall, generally October, November. The reason for that is there's a lot of deadlines at the end of the year that we're dealing with right now. But should you do a Roth conversion? Is there tax loss harvesting opportunity? Is there anything we need to file or do before December 31st? And if we do, I'd rather have that conversation in October, because I don't want to see you on Christmas Day, probably, and definitely not on New Year's Day. That'd be too late. So that's why we do the review process the way we do.
I like November. They get to see the mustache in November.
And they get to see the mustache, which is really what they're paying for.
So with your process, are you a fiduciary?
Fiduciary is a fun word, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
The issue with the word fiduciary is you can ask every single person in the world that calls themselves an advisor, and they will say yes.
Yep.
I am no different. I am a fiduciary in the sense that we do not have proprietary products. I'm an independent advisor. I think that's a good starting point for people that don't know what that means. But if you're going to work with a financial advisor, find somebody that's independent, because they don't have that added conflict of interest of selling you something that their company owns.
Give me an example of that. Everybody says that.
Everybody says that. Yeah. So if I don't want to pick on anybody.
Go ahead, pick on them.
Pick on them. So
you can edit it if it's terrible.
All right. If you work at an insurance broker-dealer, which means they're a financial planning firm that's partnered with an insurance brand.
Can you name 3 of them?
Sure.
Insurance broker-dealer, I don't think people
yes.
What does that mean?
AXA Equitable is one that we're both familiar with. Northwestern Mutual is a very popular one. Mass Mutual, Prudential. That's 4. 4 is enough. New York Life? New York Life.
Yeah.
So a lot of these companies tend to have proprietary requirements for their advisors.
What does that mean?
That means they're required to sell a certain amount of proprietary products. So
what's proprietary product?
Okay, let's calm down. So proprietary product would be a life insurance policy, mutual fund, annuity, something that is probably branded the same and owned by that insurance broker dealer. So if I was at AXA Advisors LLC or Equitable, whatever they call themselves now, they have their own proprietary annuities and life insurance that their advisors are required to sell a certain amount of each year to qualify for benefits. So if I want to have health insurance for my family, if I want to have a 401k match, various other things, if I want to win trips or incentives, I need to sell their product.
Yep.
They probably won't spell it out that clear for you, but that is a huge conflict of interest, and it might influence which product they recommend to you. Spoiler.
So I go to Alex with $1 million, and it's November.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I rather meet with Alex than somebody at one of these insurance broker dealers?
Yes, the insurance broker dealer is likely doing something called pushing for year end, which is a sales term, I think, but they have requirements and sales goals that they need to get.
I haven't heard that in a long time. That's
yeah,
great.
It's fun. By December 31st, it might mean that they need to do it to get their health insurance so that their kids can have insurance. That's a good motivation. It might be that they can win a cruise or a trip or something like that. Yeah, I would argue that's bad. If you go to an independent advisor, they don't have that. So hopefully they will, one, be less pushy. Hopefully they will make a recommendation that is in your best interest, not their best interest. And I think that's a problem in our industry.
So I walk into Office A or Office B. We'll say one's independent, one's a proprietary insurance company. How do I know? Like at the end of it, they put this thing in front of me and they say, you should put $700,000 of your money into this and $300,000 into this.
What's diversity, Dave?
How do I know? I'm a client or prospective client watching this. How do I have a clue? It sounds good.
Yeah, that's, I think, one of the problems with our industry. And this goes back to the A-share thing we were talking about earlier. It's not necessarily wrong to work at one of these places, but are you doing everything you can to disclose to your client all of those conflicts of interest that exist behind the scenes? So how would they know? Luckily, we live in a world with a lot of resources now. You can probably Google it and you'll find some information. It'll be confusing. It won't be straightforward, and the guy on their website is not going to admit to all this. So there's a lot of resources out there internet-wise. I think there's some clues. So if they have a proprietary product, when you get like that the prospectus envelope or sales material that's going to be branded like XYZ insurance company product, so it'll be obvious in there, I think. I also like to think if you ask point blank, they'll hopefully be honest, but I don't know.
What if they don't know?
If the client doesn't know, or the advisor.
Did the 23-year-old Alex as an advisor or 23-year-old Dave pick on us? Did we know?
Didn't know, no.
So how would we tell a client?
It's a problem.
What question should that client ask to get a direct answer?
We've got a whole list of questions.
Give me two.
Well, the problem is they're not going to get a direct
So we
answer.
can move on.
If they literally don't know, they're not going to be able to, they're not lying to you at that point. They just don't know.
So how would you ask a question if they don't even know the answer?
I guess maybe you need to talk to somebody else at their firm that's more experienced or something.
Yeah. Well, I think a good question would be something like, do you get extra benefits for putting me into this thing? I don't even know what this thing's called.
Or just what are my other options? And maybe as they start to talk about the other options, you'll see that there are other options that they didn't present before.
Yeah.
I think it's a bigger issue than even what we're talking about. This is a regulatory issue. There should be some kind of, there are regulatory bodies that exist for this stuff. They don't do a very good job, but there should be a clear distinction about if you do this, you're not allowed to call yourself an advisor. You need to represent yourself as a representative of this company selling this company's products.
Yes.
Would be good.
Agree.
But we really missed the mark on the regulation stuff. They've tried before.
It's also hard because those folks, the 23-year-old Dave, did have other options.
Mm-hmm.
So we could have put them in both. We were just so heavily incentivized and rewarded for doing the other thing. We never left that bubble.
Yep.
And nobody knows. That's all we talked about at group meetings. So
here's another one. So back to the fiduciary question. Another way I can answer that question is I'm a CFP, which is a certified financial planner.
Mm-hmm.
If you go on the CFP website, they will tell you that they have a fiduciary standard that they hold all CFPs to.
Interesting.
I haven't seen that play out. Right. I don't know what that really means, but what it does mean is somebody at one of these firms with all these conflicts of interest you talked about can take the test and pass the exam and say, look, I'm a CFP, therefore I'm a fiduciary, even though my firm is heavily incentivizing me to sell a product that is probably not in your best interest. So that's confusing. So that goes back to the question of if you ask any advisor, are you a fiduciary? They're probably going to say yes.
They're all going to say yes.
Because there's always some way that you can turn the conversation and say, even though I have these conflicts, I'm a CFP. And if you go on the CFP board website, they'll tell you they hold me to a fiduciary standard.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's almost like there's a business opportunity for an advisor to be an outside consultant. You come and pay Dave $3,000, and Dave will look at what was recommended to you, and I'll tell you if it was right or not, totally independent of making any other money off of you. It would probably save them way more money.
Yeah, that would be the argument for the fee-only advisors. You remove all that. It's tough.
Yeah, so you get a client that watches this or a prospective client. They go meet with advisor A and advisor B, and then a third party comes in and says, you should pick advisor A because advisor B is trying to put you in some bad stuff. There's no way you'd even know.
I would do that job.
I'm just making that up.
Yeah.
It'd be a great
if
job.
Somebody wants to pay for that service, come find me.
I'll do that. Alex does financial planning.
Yeah.
How do you justify your fees?
How do I justify my fees?
Someone comes in, they see a statement, they see minus whatever for advisory fee.
Mm-hmm.
Most folks, and I was going to let you answer this, but I want to start with, most folks think, okay, that their investments do better.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm paying Alex 1%, Alex's investments better do 1% more. What do you say to that?
Yeah, so I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I put a lot of emphasis on the tax planning aspect of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because you can make a real measurable difference there. I can, through proper tax planning, I know I can't use the word guarantee, I'll get yelled at. I can't guarantee anything, but through proper tax planning, you can make a measurable difference in the amount of taxes that somebody's paying. Whereas with the investment side of things, there's better and worse and whatever, but you really can't guarantee anything for sure there. You can't make any promises. I can't consistently be better than the guy down the road. So it's really not a winning strategy. So I think the way that we're able to justify our fee is by doing, so buzzword, comprehensive financial planning, but actually doing it. And if you're actually doing real financial planning with people and actually making a difference in the taxes they pay, making a difference in their distribution strategy, making a difference in where and how they save money and how they're allocated, that's where you actually add value to somebody's life. Mm-hmm. If someone's listening to this and thinking, well, my financial advisor is just going to give me a better rate of return, that's really not accurate. Like you could go online for much less cost, pick a mutual fund that's more or less the same thing, and away you go, and you're probably going to have a similar rate of return. That being said, I find that people that do that oftentimes are not utilizing the investments correctly, meaning that they are in a target date fund and it's done what it's done, and its performance is the same against the benchmark, but they might just be in the wrong fund to begin with. Maybe they're too aggressive or too conservative, and if you're not doing that correctly, that's where the advisor makes a difference on choosing the right allocation for the investments, even if it benchmarks similarly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a discussion with a gentleman recently that went through some things with him and ended up showing, if we do this, it will save you $35,000. The break even on his fee, just on the investment side, it's years down the road with the dollar amounts that he's working with. So it's like, I can directly show that person, we saved you X amount of dollars. You're probably never going to pay me that much unless you live till you're 120, but then there's RMDs.
And a lot of the value is like the thing that you don't see coming. So you might look at your financial situation today and be like, okay, I'm all set. I don't need anything. Like, I'm good. But there is going to be something that's going to happen in your lifetime where having a trusted financial person to turn to and avoid the costly mistake. A lot of it is, let's not make the 6-figure mistake in your financial planning where you can never recover from it.
Yep.
Hopefully you're doing that.
There's a cool drawing that's like, it shows you, and in the middle, it's a big wall that says your advisor. And on the other side of the wall, it says the big mistake.
Yeah.
So your advisor helps you avoid the big mistake, right?
Yeah, we say it all the time. I can give you examples, but even during COVID, you had this sharp drop in the market. We all got phone calls about people that wanted to get out of the market because this time's different, right? It's always, this time's different. I want to get out. I don't want to lose all my money. It's already down 20%. And I think for myself, I know it's successful in talking people through that and coaching them out of that and getting them to stay invested in the market. And quickly in this situation, we saw a recovery, and I never got the thank you phone calls back, but I know that we saved a lot of money for people by doing that.
What do you, like, you talk about all this financial planning stuff. Can I pick on you for a second?
You sure can.
You go on, and you're awesome at it, and obviously very intelligent in the financial. But what do you do outside of this, man? What is a guy that talks about this all day?
First of all, you're right.
Fun?
I am very smart. I'm glad you brought that up. What do I do for fun? I work out every morning. I have a puppy named George. Yeah. It's pretty cool. So we hang out a lot.
What kind of dog is he?
He's a golden retriever.
I know the answer.
Oh, you know the answer. Yeah. Okay. They don't.
Yeah,
he is still a golden retriever. He's 5 months, almost 6 months old. So he's getting big. He's about 35 pounds.
Does he wake you up 95 times a night?
No, we're past that.
Are you?
He wakes me up once in the morning, right at 6.
Wow.
Which is perfect.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty good.
Interesting. That children will be different. What else do you do for fun?
I used to play hockey. I reached 10:30 on a Monday night, so I don't miss that. So now I like to sleep. I read every day.
Yeah.
Become a reader. I was never a reader before. About a year ago, I decided to start reading, and I held myself to doing 10 pages a day. And now I'm over a year of doing 10 pages a day, and I've read a bunch of books. I have a spreadsheet if you want to see it. And
I might. Can you share that with people?
Sure.
What's the best one, if you had to pick one? Best one book you've read for you?
Going along with this journey of becoming a reader, Atomic Habits is a good one. Kind of just trains you on the habit. It's a very well-known book. I like that one. I also like Shoe Dog a lot, which is Phil Knight's book about starting Nike. I thought that one was really cool.
Yeah.
It's 2 answers.
So
I can keep going.
But even your books are like, you sound like me, so I'm not picking on you. It's all business stuff.
Like, yeah, the only
where's the fun?
I'm a fun guy. The only fiction book I read was 1984, and I think that's a fun topic. So what do I do for fun? Those are all fun things.
By the way, I understand. Actually, this leads right down to the question I want to ask you. I think we have time for 2 more questions.
All right.
Now that I'm hosting this all of a sudden.
Great job.
What Alex does for fun is it's like self-improvement, getting better, more business stuff, financial
If you suck
planning.
as much as I do, you do a lot of self-improvement too.
It's pretty easy, right? Alex started Atomic Habits, which is 1% better, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can go 50% better for a significant amount of time.
At the beginning, if you start low enough,
that's right.
It's really easy to get better.
So and this is for our entrepreneur friends or people that are like us, and I really mean this is could be a deep question, but as you get older and you had friends in college and you had friends from your men's night and your hockey league, and then you get into this journey of self-improvement and running your own business and specializing in financial planning and the other things, and that's what you're actually doing for fun, which I thought you were going to say. How do you relate to the friends you had 10 years ago, or don't you?
Wow, deep questions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm a loyal friend. I've hung out with the same group of guys since I was in high school.
Yeah,
and I don't see that changing. But I guess you look at the people you hang out with, and everyone's going a different direction in life. So maybe it feels like you're disconnected in that way. But I think you have common interests to bring you back.
Is it like beer?
I do.
Besides beer,
I'm sober for 75 days right now. So I don't know. I think sports are part of that. So I that out. I'm a Bills fan. I'm a Sabres fan. I've admittedly gotten away from that in recent years because I've just turned my focus to some of the other things we've talked about. But I think it's something that kind of keeps you connected to Gives you a sense of community with other people, which is important.
So
people aren't like us.
I know. And so and you don't want to say it this way because it sounds negative to the other folks, but it's like you can outgrow certain people.
Or they've outgrown me.
Or they've outgrown you. Or a lot of folks stay the same and you keep going and improving.
Sure.
So what do you tell the 23-year-old Alex about that? Anything you would change?
We'll leave that out. Anything I would stop. I don't know.
Can you outgrow a significant other?
I bet you can.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, I think you learn and develop a lot. If I look back to 22-year-old me, like the day I graduated college, where I thought I would be, I think at that point I had identified this as a career, but I probably didn't really know anything about this as a career. Yep. Like I was so naive to a lot of things. Yep. I don't think it's a problem, though. I think when you're a young 20-something-year-old, you're focused on hopefully your career to an extent, but you're going out doing things with your friends. You're spending your money at the bars on the weekends. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's part of growing up through life.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I have a lot of advice for, so keep doing what you're doing. Like you'll get there. Just keep trying to grow, though. I think if you stop trying to grow, then you stay there forever. Like I don't want to be like the 50-year-old dude at Easton Alexander on the weekends hanging out. Right? That's not a good guy to be. But when you're 23, like that's a fine spot to be. I don't know if they still go out there.
How do you know? I don't even know.
They don't.
I think it's Fairport now. But how do you know? Okay, so let's go back to this. You're in the dating world at 25 years old. Let's talk to our young entrepreneurial people right now.
Okay.
You're in the dating world, 25 years old. You're out at Easton Alexander blowing your last check to pay your friends back because you couldn't afford it till right now.
Great.
You're dating someone, you don't even know you're going to go down this journey of self-improvement and getting better and running your company and your business. How do you find a significant other that's going to keep up?
I clearly don't know the answer to this, but I think if you hopefully you find somebody that also has a growth mindset, or at least supports you having a growth mindset. And I guess at the same time, if you identify that they're not in that situation, maybe you need to be willing to accept that it might not be forever, and then you move on.
I love it. These are great.
We turned to dating advice, which is exciting.
This is great.
This is maybe I should do a dating advice podcast.
This is 25-year-old for the listeners of podcasts. We have time for one more.
We have all the time.
I could keep going on that all day.
Sure.
It's too much. What is success to you right now?
What is success to me? Success is having the ability to do things that you enjoy doing and support those around you doing the same thing, which you're supposed to say that financial success doesn't equal happiness or success. Yep. And there's diminishing returns on that, but I think you need to meet your minimum. There's studies on like $75,000 is the number. I'm sure it hasn't been adjusted for inflation, but if you make $75,000, you have your basic needs met, and that's where you do see an increase in happiness along with money until you get to 75,000-ish. So money does equal happiness, and then it levels off and it plateaus because the theory is you're meeting all your basic needs. You're not stressed about money anymore. And then after that, diminishing returns, and there's reflective happiness and there's this in the moment happiness. So your in the moment happiness levels off or diminishing returns. The reflective happiness will continue as you have more financial resources. So that's if I ask you, are you happy? You say, of course I'm happy. I own a yacht, which might be true or not, but so you can keep earning money and getting more happy, depending on how you define it.
Is happiness success?
Is happiness success? Yes.
Okay, so what is success to you is being happy.
Sure, go be happy, Dave.
There you go. I could keep grilling you on this, but wrap up the podcast. Man.
All right.
Get the people on the
way.
way.
That one took a weird turn, so thank you for being here. We will cut it off there.
There we go.
Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Alexander Neri. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Alexander Neri or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor. Alexander Neri and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.